Welcome, dear friends, to a peaceful evening in the village of Eldenbrook, where the night is calm and the stars shimmer softly overhead. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, allow yourself to be gently transported to a world where magic lies hidden just beyond the edges of the village, waiting to be uncovered. Breathe deeply and relax, for this is a story of courage, discovery, and the quiet strength found within a young heart. Let each word guide you toward rest as we journey together through the tale of Finn and the ancient secrets of the spellbook he finds. Now close your eyes, release the day's cares, and let the story carry you into a place of dreams and wonder. Once upon a time, in the quiet village of Eldenbrook, nestled between rolling hills and a vast, whispering forest, there lived a boy named Finn. Eldenbrook was a place of peace, where the people lived simple lives, tending to their farms and gardens, unaware of the ancient secrets that slumbered just beyond the village's edge. The forest, dark and dense, was a place of mystery, filled with tales of long-forgotten magic. Few dared venture too far into its shadowy depths, for it was said that strange things lurked there. Finn was different from the other village children. Where they found joy in games and mischief, he found fascination in the old stories told by the village elders. He would sit for hours by the fire, listening to tales of enchanted forests, powerful witches, and magical treasures hidden in the darkest corners of the world. His imagination soared with each tale, and though he had never seen magic with his own eyes, he believed in its existence. One fateful afternoon, as the sun dipped low and cast a golden glow over the village, Finn decided to explore the forest. He had often wandered to its edge, but something about that day called him deeper into its shadowy embrace. The air was cool, and the trees seemed to whisper his name as he walked, their branches reaching out like fingers guiding him forward. It wasn't long before Finn found himself in a part of the forest he had never seen before. The trees here were older, their trunks twisted and gnarled, and the underbrush was thick with brambles. As he pushed aside a curtain of vines, he stumbled upon a clearing, at the center of which stood an ancient tree, its roots sprawling across the ground like the veins of the earth. There, nestled between the roots, was an object that caught his eye. Covered in dirt and leaves, it seemed to pulse with a faint golden light. Finn knelt down, brushing away the soil to reveal an old leather-bound book, its cover cracked and worn by time. The air around the book felt different, as if it held a power that had been hidden away for centuries. His heart raced with excitement. This was no ordinary book. The leather was etched with strange symbols, and a heavy clasp kept its pages sealed tight. Finn looked around, half expecting someone or something to appear and claim it, but the forest was silent, save for the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Unable to resist, Finn slipped the book into his satchel and hurried back to the village, his mind swirling with possibilities. What could this book contain? Was it a forgotten relic from one of the old stories? Perhaps it held the key to magic, real magic, the kind he had only heard about in tales. When Finn finally reached his small cottage on the edge of the village, the sun had begun to set, casting long shadows across the fields. He slipped inside, eager to inspect his discovery. Sitting at his wooden table, he carefully unlatched the clasp, his hands trembling with anticipation. The pages were old and fragile, filled with symbols and writing in a language he did not understand. Still, there was something about the book that felt alive, as though it was waiting for him to unlock its secrets. He flipped through the pages until he found a spell written in clearer script. The words seemed to glow faintly on the page, and without thinking, Finn began to read them aloud. As the last word left his lips, the air in the cottage shifted. A strange wind blew through the room, rattling the windows and extinguishing the candlelight. Finn felt a chill crawl down his spine. The book in his hands grew warm, and for a brief moment, the symbols on the page seemed to shimmer and shift, as though the magic within them had been awakened. Finn snapped the book shut, his heart pounding. What had he done? Outside, the wind howled, and in the distance, a strange, eerie light flickered through the trees of the forest. Something ancient had stirred, and though Finn did not yet know it, his life and the peaceful village of Eldenbrook would never be the same again. Finn barely slept that night. His mind buzzed with the memory of the strange wind, the flickering lights, and the warmth of the spellbook in his hands. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the glowing symbols, twisting and turning like threads of ancient magic. Despite his fear, curiosity gnawed at him, whispering that the book held something more, a secret waiting to be uncovered. At dawn, the village stirred with the usual sounds of roosters crowing and villagers going about their chores. But something was different. A faint tension hung in the air, as though the world itself had shifted. Finn, bleary-eyed and restless, clutched the spellbook under his arm as he stepped outside. The air felt heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and something else, something unfamiliar. He wandered through the village, trying to make sense of what he had done. Strange things were happening. As he passed the baker's shop, he noticed loaves of bread floating just above the counter, drifting lazily through the air as though carried by an unseen hand. Across the street, a cat sat on the fence, calmly conversing with a group of birds that chirped and cawed in response. The villagers noticed too. Murmurs of confusion filled the air, and people began to gather in small clusters, pointing and whispering. No one could explain the odd occurrences, but Finn knew the truth. His stomach twisted with guilt. The spell he had read the night before, it had triggered something. something that was spreading throughout Eldenbrook like wildfire. He quickened his pace, clutching the book tighter. He needed to undo it. Surely there was a way to reverse the spell, to put things back to the way they were before. But how? The words in the book were written in a language he barely understood, and he had no knowledge of magic, let alone the power it held. As he neared the village square, an elderly man named Bertram, known for his wisdom and knowledge of the old ways, approached him. Bertram's face was lined with age, his eyes sharp despite his years. "Finn," Bertram called, his voice steady despite the strangeness around him. "I've seen you wandering. You look troubled." Finn hesitated, his heart pounding in his chest. Could he trust Bertram with the truth? The old man had always been kind to him, telling him stories of the village's history, of times when magic had been part of the world. But this was different. This was real. Before Finn could speak, Bertram's gaze fell on the book tucked under his arm. His eyes widened, and for a moment, Finn saw a flicker of recognition. "Where did you get that?" Bertram's voice was low, filled with a mixture of awe and concern. I found it in the forest," Finn stammered. "Under the old tree near the clearing. I didn't know what it was at first, but then I read from it." Bertram's expression darkened. He reached out, placing a hand on Finn's shoulder. "That is no ordinary book, my boy. That book belongs to Morwena, the witch who once ruled these lands." Finn felt his heart drop. He had heard stories of Morwena, the witch who had been banished long ago, her powers sealed away after she was defeated by the combined strength of the village and the forest itself. But he had never imagined her magic could still linger, waiting to be unleashed. "What have I done?" Finn whispered, his voice trembling. Bertram sighed deeply. "Morwena's power was hidden for a reason. The magic you've awakened is not something that can be easily undone. It will spread, and the longer it remains unchecked, the stronger it will grow. You must find a way to reverse the spell before it consumes the village." Panic rose in Finn's chest. He had no idea how to undo such powerful magic. The symbols in the book were beyond his understanding, and each moment he delayed, the magic seemed to spread further, twisting the fabric of reality in ways that defied explanation. "There must be something in the book," Bertram said, his voice steady but urgent. "A way to contain the power, to return it to its rightful place." Finn nodded, though fear gripped him tightly. He would have to delve deeper into the spellbook, but doing so meant risking even more. Yet he knew there was no other choice. The village was already beginning to change. Objects floating, animals speaking, and strange energies pulsing through the air. Finn made his way back to his cottage, the weight of the spellbook pressing heavily on his mind. As he sat down once again at his table, He opened the book to the page where he had read the first spell. The symbol shimmered faintly, as though mocking him, daring him to continue. Taking a deep breath, Finn turned the page. As Finn turned the page, the air around him seemed to hum with anticipation. The symbols on the parchment shifted and glowed faintly, as though they were alive, weaving together to form a spell too powerful for him to comprehend. He hesitated, his fingers trembling as they brushed the edges of the ancient script. The words beckoned him, urging him to read, but Finn could feel the weight of the magic pressing down on him, like a storm waiting to break. Before he could make sense of the strange writing, a gust of wind blew through the small window, rattling the wooden shutters. The flicker of a shadow passed through the room, and for a moment, Finn thought he saw a figure standing just outside, watching him. He leapt to his feet, rushing to the window, but there was nothing there, only the stillness of the forest, dark and foreboding. Unease gnawed at his heart, and Finn returned to the table, determined to understand the spellbook's secrets. Yet, as he pored over the pages, he began to realize that the magic he had unleashed was far more dangerous than he had imagined. It was not just a single spell gone wrong. It was an awakening, a stirring of something ancient, something dark. Suddenly, the room grew cold. The flame of the candle flickered, dimming to a pale blue. Finn glanced up, and a chill ran down his spine as he saw the symbols on the page pulse with life. Then, without warning, the air in the cottage crackled with energy, and a low, sinister laugh echoed from the pages of the book. Finn stumbled back, knocking over the chair as the laughter grew louder. A thin, curling mist began to rise from the spellbook, swirling in the air before coalescing into a dark, shadowy figure. It was a woman, tall and cloaked in robes of night, her face pale and her eyes burning with a cold, ancient fire. It was Morwena. The witch had returned. "You've done well, boy," Morwena purred, her voice smooth and venomous, as though dripping with malice. "I've been waiting centuries for someone foolish enough to open my book." Finn stood frozen in terror, his mind racing. This was the witch of legend, the one whose power had once been so great that the village elders had joined forces with the forest itself to banish her. And now, because of his curiosity, she was free once more. What? What do you want?" Finn stammered, his heart pounding. Morwena's smile widened, revealing sharp, gleaming teeth. "I want what was taken from me. My power, my dominion. The world has forgotten me, but soon they will remember. And you, little one, have given me the key to return." Finn felt a wave of dread wash over him. The spell he had spoken aloud. It hadn't just caused the strange happenings in the village. It had awakened Morwena herself, slowly drawing her spirit back from the shadows where it had been sealed. "I didn't mean to," Finn began, but Morwena silenced him with a sharp, icy glare. "It doesn't matter what you meant," she hissed. "What matters is that you have unleashed my power. And now, I will reclaim what is mine." With a wave of her hand, the shadows around her seemed to expand, crawling along the walls like dark tendrils. The cottage groaned as though under immense pressure, and outside, the once serene village began to tremble. The ground shook, the sky darkened, and the air crackled with magic as Morwena's influence spread. Her presence growing stronger with every passing second. Finn's mind raced. He had to do something, anything to stop her. But what could he, a simple village boy, do against such powerful magic? Desperately, he reached for the spellbook, hoping to find a way to reverse the damage. But as his hand touched the book, Morwena let out a sharp, mocking laugh. "Foolish child," she sneered. "You think you can undo what you've set in motion? The magic you've released is ancient, far beyond your understanding. The more you meddle, the more chaos you will bring." Finn backed away, his heart sinking. She was right. He didn't know how to stop her. And now, the village, the people he cared about, were in grave danger. He had to find a way to fix this. But it was clear that the answers would not be in the spellbook. He needed help. Someone who understood magic better than he did. Morwena began to fade, her form dissolving into shadows. "Enjoy the last moments of your quiet little village," she whispered, her voice lingering like a curse. "For soon, all will bow to me once more." And with that, she was gone, leaving Finn alone in the cold, silent cottage, the spellbook still glowing ominously on the table. The morning dawned bleak and strange, casting a pale light over the village of Eldenbrook. Finn stood outside his cottage, clutching the spellbook to his chest, his eyes wide as he beheld the sight before him. What had once been a peaceful village, filled with the hum of daily life, had transformed into a place of chaos. The magic Finn had unwittingly unleashed had spread like wildfire. The bakery, where loaves of bread had floated lazily the day before, was now a whirlwind of flour and dough, swirling through the air as if caught in an invisible storm. The village blacksmith's forge had erupted in flames, though not the ordinary kind. These flames flickered green and blue, licking the sky with unnatural heat. Animals roamed the streets freely, some walking on two legs, others speaking in voices that sent shivers down Finn's spine. And the villagers. Finn could see the fear etched on their faces. People gathered in the square, their voices rising in confusion and panic. They pointed to the sky, where dark clouds, heavy and swirling, had appeared out of nowhere, casting ominous shadows over the village. Some whispered of a curse, others of ancient magic returning to haunt them. Finn's heart pounded as he watched the village descend into fear and disorder. He could see the children, wide-eyed and clinging to their parents, asking questions no one could answer. He knew deep down that this was all his fault. He had opened the book, spoken the spell, and now Morwena's magic was running wild. But what could he do now? He was snapped out of his thoughts by the sound of raised voices. Turning toward the square, Finn saw a crowd forming around Bertram. The village elder Bertram stood tall, his staff in hand, trying to calm the growing fear. "This is not the work of some wandering sorcery," Bertram said, his voice steady. "This is something ancient, something far more dangerous than we have seen in generations." A villager called out, "What can we do?" "Our crops are failing, and our homes are being torn apart by magic. Will no one stop this?" Bertram's gaze swept the crowd, his eyes full of concern. "We must find the source of this magic and stop it before it consumes everything we hold dear." Finn swallowed hard, guilt swirling inside him. He knew Bertram was talking about him, though the old man didn't yet know it. Finn had been the one to release the magic, to call forth Morwena's power from the pages of the Spellbook. His hands trembled as he held the book tighter, wondering if he should confess his terrible mistake. Just as he was about to speak, a piercing cry rang through the air. All eyes turned toward the forest. From the depths of the trees, a dark mist began to seep into the village, creeping along the ground like a living thing. The villagers gasped, stepping back in fear as the mist twisted and coiled, forming shapes, ghastly, half-formed figures that seemed to dance on the edge of shadow. Finn's stomach lurched. Morwena's power was growing, spreading from the forest into the village. The mist was her doing, a warning of what was to come. He had to act now, before it was too late. With a deep breath, Finn stepped forward. "It's my fault," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Bertram turned to him, frowning. "What did you say, boy?" "I said it's my fault," Finn repeated, louder this time. He held up the spellbook. "I found this in the forest, and I read from it. I didn't know what it was at first, but now I realize it belongs to Morwena. I think I've awakened her." A stunned silence fell over the crowd. The villagers stared at Finn, their faces a mix of fear and disbelief. Even Bertram looked shaken. "The Witch of Eldenbrook," Bertram said, his voice low and grave. "You've awakened her?" Finn nodded, shame flooding his heart. "I didn't mean to. I thought it was just an old book. But now everything is falling apart. The magic, it's hers." Bertram stepped closer, his expression stern but not unkind. "Morwena's magic is not something to be taken lightly. She was banished long ago, but her power remains, hidden, waiting for someone to make the mistake of unleashing it." Finn felt a lump rise in his throat. "What can we do?" Bertram placed a hand on his shoulder, his voice steady and calm. "There may be a way to stop her, but it will not be easy. You must journey to the heart of the forest, to where Morwena once ruled. Only there can her magic be bound again. But be warned, Finn. Morwena will not let you succeed easily. The crowd murmured in fear, but Finn nodded, determination growing inside him. He had caused this chaos, and now he would do whatever it took to stop it. Even if it meant venturing deep into the dark heart of the forest. "I'll go," Finn said, his voice resolute. "I'll fix this." The weight of Finn's decision pressed heavily on his heart as he prepared to leave the village. The path ahead was uncertain, but he knew there was no other way. He couldn't stand by and watch as the village of Eldenbrook crumbled under the witch's dark magic. Finn wrapped the spellbook in cloth and slipped it into his satchel, determined to protect it until he could find a way to undo the damage he had caused. As he made his way toward the edge of the village, Bertram stopped him, his weathered face lined with concern. "Finn," the elder said, his voice low. "The forest is no ordinary place. It will test you, your courage, your will. And Morwena's magic will make it even more dangerous. You'll need guidance." "I'll do whatever it takes," Finn replied, though his heart raced with doubt. "But where can I find someone who can help me?" Bertram looked toward the dark line of trees that marked the entrance to the forest. "There is someone who may know the way. She lives alone, on the outskirts of the village. An old woman who has seen more of the world than most. She knows the secrets of magic better than any of us." Finn blinked in surprise. "Who is she?" "She is known simply as the Wise One," Bertram said. "Few speak of her now, for she has kept to herself for many years. But long ago, she was a powerful keeper of ancient knowledge. If anyone can guide you through the forest and help you face Morwena, it's her." Finn nodded, though his nerves tingled with uncertainty. The Wise One sounded like another figure from the old tales, someone who lived at the edges of reality. But he had no choice. If there was even the slightest chance she could help, he had to seek her out. He made his way through the village, following the winding path toward the far edge, where the cottages grew sparse and the trees loomed closer. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the fields, as if the world itself was preparing for the dark magic that would soon descend. At last, Finn reached the small crooked cottage that stood at the boundary of the forest. The air here felt different, thick with an ancient energy, and the trees seemed to whisper as the wind rustled their branches. Finn hesitated, but his resolve hardened as he stepped forward and knocked on the door. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, with a soft creak, the door opened, revealing a figure cloaked in a deep, midnight blue robe. The woman's face was hidden beneath a hood, but her voice when she spoke was calm and knowing. "You are the boy who opened the spellbook," she said, not as a question but as a statement. "I have been expecting you." Finn swallowed his fear. "Yes," he replied. "I need your help. Morwena's magic is spreading through the village, and I don't know how to stop it." The Wise One stepped aside, gesturing for Finn to enter. Inside, the cottage was warm and filled with the scent of herbs and wood smoke. Strange objects lined the shelves: dried flowers, glittering crystals, and bottles of mysterious liquids. The air buzzed with a quiet hum of magic, though it felt nothing like the cold, sinister energy of Morwena. You have awakened something very old, very dangerous, the Wise One said, closing the door behind them. Morwena's power was sealed away for good reason, but you are not the first to make such a mistake. I didn't mean to, Finn said, his voice trembling. I just wanted to know what was in the book. The Wise One turned to face him, her eyes gleaming from beneath her hood. Curiosity is a powerful thing, child. It drives us to discover great wonders, but it also leads us into darkness if we are not careful. She gestured to the spellbook in Finn's satchel. That book holds more than just spells. It holds Morwena's very essence. As long as you carry it, her power will grow. But there is a way to stop her. Finn's breath caught. How? The Wise One moved to a small table where a large map of the forest lay spread out. She pointed to a distant mark in the heart of the woods. You must take the spellbook to Morwena's lair, deep within the cursed forest. It is a place hidden from the world, guarded by magic and shadows. Only there can you return the power that has been unleashed. Finn stared at the map, the mark seeming so far away, lost in the twisting maze of trees. And if I can get there, what do I do? The Wise One met his gaze, her voice steady. You must bind the magic to the earth once more. It will not be easy. Morwena will resist you at every step, and the forest itself will test you. But if you fail, her power will consume everything. Finn nodded, though the weight of the task filled him with dread. I'll do it, he said, his voice quiet but firm. I have to. The Wise One smiled softly, though there was sadness in her eyes. Then go with courage, Finn of Eldenbrook. The path ahead is dark, but you have more strength than you know. With the Wise One's words still echoing in his mind, Finn set out on his journey. The sky was pale and the air heavy, as if the forest itself knew the weight of the task that lay ahead. He clutched the map tightly, its worn edges flapping in the wind as he followed the path that led into the heart of the dark woods. As he stepped deeper into the forest, the trees grew taller and thicker, their branches twisting together to form a canopy that blotted out the sun. Shadows stretched long across the ground, and the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and old wood. Every rustle of leaves and snap of a twig sent shivers down Finn's spine, but he pressed on, determined to right the wrong he had unleashed. The path ahead seemed endless, winding through the trees like a serpent. Finn could feel the weight of the spellbook growing heavier with each step, as if it knew where they were headed. He could almost hear the faint whispers of Morwena's magic, stirring beneath the leather cover, waiting for its moment to break free. For hours, Finn walked in silence. His only companions, the creaking branches and the distant hoot of an owl. He consulted the map often, tracing the twisting lines that marked the way to Morwena's lair. The Wise One's warnings echoed in his ears. The forest will test you. But Finn had no idea what kind of trials awaited him. As the day wore on, the forest began to change. The trees, once towering and ancient, now seemed to lean closer, their gnarled branches reaching out like hands. The air grew colder, and a thick mist began to rise from the ground, swirling around Finn's ankles and making it difficult to see the path. He wrapped his cloak tightly around him, trying to keep warm, but the chill in the air was more than physical. It was the chill of magic, dark and foreboding. Just as Finn began to wonder if he had lost his way, the mist parted, revealing a large stone archway covered in twisting vines. Beyond it lay a narrow path, lined with strange glowing mushrooms that cast an eerie green light. Finn hesitated, glancing at the map. This was the way. The entrance to the deeper part of the forest, where Morwena's lair awaited. With a deep breath, Finn stepped through the archway, his heart pounding in his chest. The moment he crossed the threshold, the air grew even colder, and the whispers of the forest grew louder, as if the trees themselves were speaking in hushed tones. Finn could feel the presence of magic all around him, thick and heavy, like a storm gathering on the horizon. As he walked, the glowing mushrooms flickered, casting strange shadows on the path ahead. Finn's footsteps echoed eerily, and every now and then he thought he saw movement out of the corner of his eye, a flicker of a figure, or the glint of eyes watching him from the darkness. But when he turned to look, there was nothing there. Suddenly, the path opened up into a small clearing, and in the center stood a large stone well, covered in moss and ivy. The water inside was perfectly still, reflecting the faint light of the mushrooms. Finn approached cautiously, the hairs on the back of his neck standing on end. There was something strange about the well, something magical. As he peered into the water, a voice whispered in his ear, soft and ghostly, "Turn back, boy." Finn froze, his heart racing. The voice was not his imagination. It was real, low and menacing, echoing through the clearing. He spun around, but there was no one there. The mist curled lazily around the edges of the clearing, thick and impenetrable. "Turn back," the voice whispered again. "You do not belong here." Finn clenched his fists, trying to steady his breath. He couldn't turn back. He had to press on. The village depended on him, and the power in the spellbook was growing stronger with each passing hour. If he didn't reach Morwena's lair soon, there might be no hope left. "I won't turn back," Finn said aloud, his voice trembling but firm. "I have to fix what I've done." The forest seemed to sigh, the mist swirling faster now, as if it were alive. Finn stepped away from the well, forcing himself to continue down the path. As he did, the ground beneath him trembled, and the trees seemed to groan, their branches twisting in unnatural ways. The first trial had begun. The path ahead was no longer clear. Stones and roots rose up, twisting into a maze that blocked his way. Finn's heart pounded in his chest, but he didn't hesitate. He would not let the forest's tricks stop him. With the map clutched tightly in his hand, he stepped into the maze, determined to reach Morwena's lair, no matter what dangers awaited him. Finn stepped into the maze, his breath shallow and his heart racing. The forest had shifted around him, the path now obscured by towering stone walls, covered in twisting ivy and roots. Above him, the trees seemed to sway with a strange rhythm, their branches creaking as though whispering secrets only they knew. The glowing mushrooms still lit the way, casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls. He kept his eyes on the map, though its lines had grown blurred and distorted, as if the forest itself was trying to confuse him. Every turn he took seemed to lead deeper into the maze, and the air grew thicker, almost suffocating, as though the forest was closing in around him. The ground beneath his feet shifted constantly, making it difficult to find his balance. "This is the first of Morwena's traps," Finn whispered to himself. "She doesn't want me to find her." But Finn was determined. He clutched the spellbook tightly, feeling its weight press against his side. The magic within it seemed to hum, growing stronger the closer he came to Morwena's lair. He knew he had little time before the power would become too great to control. As Finn navigated the maze, strange sounds echoed through the air. Whispers, low and indistinct, like the wind carrying forgotten voices. At first he ignored them, focusing on the path ahead, but soon the voices grew louder, more insistent. They called his name, soft and familiar, as though they knew him. "Finn." He paused, glancing around. The voices seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. His pulse quickened, and he gripped the map tighter. "Finn, come home." The voice was gentle, soothing even, and for a moment it reminded him of his mother's lullabies when he was a child. He shook his head, trying to clear the thoughts. This was another trick of the forest. He had been warned. Yet the voice persisted, tugging at his heart. "Come home, Finn. Leave this place. You don't belong here." Finn hesitated. The longing to turn back was strong, to escape the cold grip of the forest and return to the warmth and safety of Eldenbrook. But then he remembered the village, the strange magic that had taken hold, the fear on the villagers' faces. He had unleashed this chaos, and only he could stop it. "I can't go back," Finn whispered to the voices, his resolve hardening. "Not yet." With each step forward, the whispers grew more frantic, now twisting from gentle pleas to harsh, mocking tones. "You think you can defeat Morwena?" they hissed. You are nothing but a foolish boy. Turn back before it's too late. The path ahead twisted into sharp, jagged turns, the walls seeming to close in on him. Finn's hands shook as he pressed onward, ignoring the taunts and focusing on the task at hand. The maze grew darker, the mushroom's glow fading, and the air became colder, biting at his skin. He could feel the forest testing him, trying to break his spirit. Finally, after what felt like hours of wandering, Finn reached the heart of the maze. In the center stood a great stone gate, its surface etched with ancient symbols that pulsed with a faint, otherworldly light. The gate towered above him, blocking his way forward, and before it, a figure materialized from the mist. It was a shadowy being, its form ever shifting, cloaked in darkness. Its face was obscured, but its eyes gleamed like cold stars, staring into Finn's very soul. "You have come far," the figure intoned, its voice like the rustling of dead leaves. "But this is where your journey ends. You are not worthy to pass." Finn took a step forward, his hands trembling. "I don't care what you think. I have to fix what I've done. The village is in danger because of me." The shadowy figure tilted its head, as if considering his words. "You carry Morwena's spellbook, yet you think you can defeat her. You are but a child playing with forces you do not understand." "I may not understand," Finn said, swallowing his fear, "but I will not let Morwena destroy everything I love." The figure's eyes narrowed, and it seemed to grow larger, looming over Finn like a great storm cloud. "If you wish to pass," it said, its voice thunderous now, "you must face the truth." Finn's heart raced. What truth? The figure reached out a shadowy hand, and suddenly the images of Finn's mistakes flashed before his eyes. His curiosity, his foolishness in reading from the spellbook, and the chaos that followed. The village in ruins, the people in fear, all because of him. "Look at what you have done," the figure whispered. "You are the one who brought this upon them. You are the reason for their suffering. Can you bear the weight of this truth?" Tears stung Finn's eyes as he looked at the destruction he had caused. For a moment, doubt filled his heart, and he wondered if the figure was right. Perhaps he was unworthy of fixing this. But then, through the haze of guilt, a spark of determination flared. "Yes," Finn said, his voice trembling but resolute. "I can." The figure paused, as if taken aback, then slowly began to fade. "Very well," it said. "You may pass, but know this. Your greatest trial is yet to come." The gate groaned open, and Finn, though weary and shaken, stepped through, knowing that the path ahead would only grow more perilous. But he had faced the first trial, and he would face whatever came next with the same determination. Beyond the gate, the forest seemed to change yet again, growing darker and more twisted with each step Finn took. The trees leaned closer, their gnarled branches like the hands of old crones. their leaves whispering secrets he could not understand. The air was colder here, heavy with the weight of ancient magic, and Finn felt it pressing down on him, urging him to turn back. But he pressed on, his heart beating fast, the spellbook a heavy burden in his satchel. At last, after what felt like hours of walking, Finn reached the edge of a vast, eerie clearing. In its center stood a tall, crumbling tower, its stone walls covered in thick vines and moss. The sky above was swirling with dark clouds, and the wind howled through the trees, carrying with it the faint sound of a woman's laughter, cold, cruel, and filled with malice. Morwena's lair. Finn swallowed hard. He had come this far, but now, standing on the threshold of the witch's domain, fear gripped his heart. The tales of Morwena's cruelty and power echoed in his mind, and the memory of her shadowy form rising from the spellbook sent chills down his spine. Could he really face her? Could he really stop the magic he had unleashed? But there was no time for doubt. The village was counting on him. He had seen the chaos his mistake had caused, and he could not bear the thought of returning to find Eldenbrook consumed by Morwena's dark power. Taking a deep breath, Finn stepped into the clearing. As he approached the tower, the ground beneath him trembled, and the air around him seemed to shimmer with dark energy. The stone door to the tower creaked open of its own accord, and a voice, low and echoing, called out to him from within. "Come, Finn, I have been waiting for you." It was Morwena. Her voice was smooth, like silk over steel, filled with a dark amusement that made Finn's skin crawl. He hesitated for only a moment before stepping through the doorway and into the tower. Inside, the tower was dark and cold, the walls lined with ancient tapestries that fluttered in the windless air. Strange shadows moved along the walls, twisting and writhing as if alive. In the center of the room, atop a raised dais, stood Morwena herself. The witch was as terrible and magnificent as the stories had told. She was tall and regal, her long black robes flowing around her like smoke. Her face was pale, almost ghostly, and her eyes glowed with an unnatural light. In one hand, she held a long staff, its tip adorned with a jagged crystal that pulsed with dark magic. "Finn of Eldenbrook," Morwena said, her voice dripping with mockery. "The boy who thought he could play with magic. How brave of you to come all this way, and how foolish." Finn stood frozen, his heart hammering in his chest. He had imagined this moment many times, but now that he was standing before her, he realized just how powerful she truly was. The air around her seemed to hum with energy, and the dark magic that radiated from her filled the room, pressing in on him from all sides. "I didn't mean to release your magic," Finn said, his voice trembling. "But I'm here to fix it. I'll stop you." Morwena's laugh was sharp, cutting through the air like a blade. "Stop me?" she repeated, her eyes narrowing. You think you can stop me, boy? You are nothing. Just a child who stumbled upon something far beyond his understanding. She raised her staff, and the shadows in the room surged toward Finn, twisting into shapes. Snakes and wolves and monstrous figures with glowing eyes. They snarled and hissed, surrounding him, their dark forms pressing closer and closer. Finn's heart raced, but he stood his ground. You're wrong, he said, though his voice shook. I may not know much about magic, but I know that it's my fault this is happening, and I won't let you destroy my home. Morwena's smile faded, her expression turning cold and dangerous. Brave words, she said softly. But bravery won't save you. With a flick of her wrist, the shadows lunged at Finn. In that moment, Finn's mind raced. He didn't have the power to fight Morwena head-on. He knew that much. But he did have the Spellbook, and something the Wise One had told him came rushing back to him. The book holds Morwena's essence. As long as you carry it, her power will grow. Finn's eyes widened. The book. That was the key. As the shadows closed in around him, Finn reached into his satchel and pulled out the Spellbook. The moment his fingers touched its cover, he felt the magic inside it pulse, like a heartbeat in his hands. Morwena's eyes narrowed as she saw the book, and for the first time, Finn saw a flicker of fear cross her face. You think that will help you? She hissed, her voice filled with venom. That book belongs to me. Finn ignored her. He flipped the book open, and the pages seemed to turn on their own, glowing faintly with an ancient light. His heart pounded as he found the page, the spell he had spoken the night he first opened the book. Only now did he understand its true meaning. With a deep breath, Finn began to speak the words of the spell, his voice strong and steady. The shadows around him faltered, their forms flickering as the magic in the spellbook rose. Morwena's face twisted with rage, and she raised her staff, dark energy crackling around her. No! She screamed, her voice filled with fury. You will not stop me. But Finn kept speaking, louder and louder, the words of the spell filling the tower. The light from the spellbook grew brighter, pushing back the darkness, and Morwena let out a shriek of rage as the magic swirled around her. The witch's power, once so strong, began to falter. The tower trembled as the words of the spell echoed through its ancient walls, their power growing stronger with each syllable Finn spoke. The light from the spellbook grew brighter, bathing the room in a radiant glow that pushed back Morwena's shadows. The dark magic that had once filled the air began to thin, its sinister presence retreating as the spell worked its way through the ancient bonds of the witch's power. Morwena's eyes blazed with fury, her face twisted with anger and desperation. She raised her staff, dark energy crackling at its tip, but even she could feel the shift in the magic. the balance that had begun to tip away from her control. "You cannot undo what you've done," she shrieked, her voice filled with venom. "This power belongs to me, boy. You are nothing." Finn's heart pounded, but he didn't falter. He felt the strength of the spellbook's magic coursing through him, guiding his voice and his hands. The words of the spell, though foreign and ancient, flowed from his lips as though he had always known them, as if they were part of him. He had made a terrible mistake by unleashing this magic, but now he was determined to set things right. With each word, the tower seemed to groan, as though the very stones were waking from a long slumber. The shadows around him flickered and writhed, their once solid forms growing thin and wispy. Morwena's power was weakening, and she knew it. Her fury turned to desperation as she swung her staff wildly, trying to summon the dark forces that had once bent to her will. But the magic no longer obeyed her. "You think you can steal my power?" Morwena hissed, her voice shaking with rage. "You are a fool. My magic has lived for centuries. It will never be yours to control." Finn didn't respond. He couldn't. His focus was entirely on the spell, the words pouring from him with a force that was beyond his understanding. The light from the spellbook grew even brighter, so bright it hurt to look at. It filled every corner of the room, and the shadows melted away beneath its radiance. With a final furious scream, Morwena unleashed all the power she had left, sending a bolt of dark magic hurtling toward Finn. He saw it coming, felt the cold, icy energy of it. But something inside him, something older and stronger than fear, told him to stand his ground. The bolt of magic struck the light surrounding him, and for a brief moment, the room was filled with both light and darkness, the two forces clashing in a battle of wills. But the darkness was no match for the ancient magic of the spellbook. The light consumed the dark magic, swallowing it whole and sending it back into the shadows from which it had come. Morwena let out a final ear-piercing shriek as her power was ripped from her. The staff in her hand cracked, and the crystal at its tip shattered, sending shards of dark energy scattering across the room. The witch staggered, her once commanding presence crumbling before Finn's eyes. "No!" she screamed, her voice breaking. "This is not how it was supposed to end." But it was. Finn knew it. And so did she. With the last word of the spell spoken, the light from the spellbook surged one final time, filling the entire tower with a blinding flash. Morwena's form dissolved into the light, her dark essence fading into nothingness as the ancient magic bound her once more to the earth. And then, as quickly as it had begun, it was over. The tower grew silent, the air still and heavy with the absence of Morwena's power. Finn stood in the center of the room, breathing hard, his hands shaking as he clutched the spellbook. The light from its pages faded, leaving only the soft glow of the mushrooms outside to illuminate the room. For a long moment, Finn couldn't move. His heart raced, his mind struggling to comprehend what had just happened. Morwena was gone. Her magic, the darkness that had threatened to consume Eldenbrook, was sealed away once more. He had done it. Finn lowered the spellbook, its pages now still and silent, the ancient magic within it finally at rest. He looked around the tower, half expecting the shadows to return, but there was only peace. The dark magic had been banished, and the forest, once alive with sinister energy, was quiet. With a deep breath, Finn stepped out of the tower and into the clearing. The swirling clouds above had cleared, revealing a pale, soft moonlight that bathed the forest in a gentle glow. The air felt lighter, cleaner, as though the earth itself had sighed in relief. As he made his way back toward the village, Finn felt a weight lift from his shoulders.